Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I wasn't going to do another statement analysis, but I did watch Nancy Grace essentially interrogate the crap out of the Proudfoots on her crime stories. She grilled them, and it was interesting to see that because normally when you have parents of missing children come onto a show, there's a lot more warmth toward them, a lot more questions about how they're doing and all that kind of stuff. This did not come out of Nancy tonight. And I've done Nancy's shows for many years. I can't remember how long I was on her show, at least a decade and a half as a regular. And so I know what she was thinking in her head when she was doing this. She has concerns. She has concerns about the Proudfoots and whether Sebastian really walked away, or she wouldn't have asked all the questions she asked. Does that mean they're guilty? Absolutely not. But as a prosecutor, or as a profiler or a detective, these are the kinds of questions you would ask if you still have, shall we say, suspicions. So no one's saying they're guilty at this point, or that they're guilty at all. Sebastian may have walked away and simply there's not evidence to prove what happened yet. But I wanted to do a statement analysis of this particular this very interesting interview of the Proudfoots, because I found inconsistencies and lies and changing of stories. And those are things that send up more red flags yet again. Now, let me start. I've got my notes here. And I'm going to try to grab the ones I think are most important. I'll just say, just because I thought it was kind of amusing, when Nancy started the show, she basically said, we want to get to, we want to know what is true. And then she says, our special guests, the Proudfoots, who were at home with Sebastian when he goes missing. And I'm like, and they said, yeah. And she said hello to them. And I said, yes, ma'am. And I'm like, you should object right there because supposedly he wasn't home. So that was kind of amusing. I'm sure they just didn't respond because they were beginning of the show. At least that's what I will say at this point. And so then, of course, they correct this at some point, and she says, no, he was out of town. Chris Proudfoot was out of town, and Katie was there with just Sebastian. Okay, so now let's start there. One of the questions she asked, which I've been waiting for somebody to ask, is when was the last time Sebastian was seen by anybody outside of, well, essentially Katie? And Katie explains that they went to BJ's, they went to the bowling alley, and they went to dinner. And supposedly the people that were at dinner were a few relatives of hers. So that, therefore, if that is accurate, the last time Sebastian was seen by someone outside of Katie is dinner time at a restaurant. At that point, I wish she had asked when you left the restaurant. I would like to have had a time, but she did not ask about the time. So once she left the restaurant, that was the last time. Let's be clear. That was the last time Sebastian was seen by anybody else. It doesn't even mean he made it home. We have no proof he made it home. We just have proof that if it's accurate what she's saying, and I'm sure the police have checked all this out, that he was at the restaurant. And then Katie and Sebastian left the restaurant. After that, once they left the restaurant, we have no idea where Sebastian was. Did he arrive home or didn't he arrive home? Did he arrive home and then they hung out for a while? Did he then go to bed at 9 o'clock, as she states? We do not know. This is the word of Katie at this point. All right, unless they have some cameras showing the car arriving at the house, but there seems to be a lack of lights and cameras around. But anyway, the police might know more of the details as to whether Sebastian actually reached the home. All right, so now let's assume he did reach the home. She says he goes to bed at 9 o'clock, and she's on the phone with her husband, and they both go to bed at about the same time, but they finish their talks at 12. But she changed her story, and I found this absolutely fascinating. She changed her story from every other time she's told it. She said, well, originally she said he went to bed at 9 o'clock. That's story number one. Story number two, he went to bed at 9 o'clock, but then at 10 o'clock, she heard this thud, and she yelled up, go to bed. I said, paraphrased. Now she's changed her story again. Now it's a third story. She says that at 10 o'clock, she heard a thud and she basically called up and said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Well, get to bed." Paraphrased again. Here's the problem I have with, well, the story changing 3 times is a problem, but here's a bigger problem, in my opinion. Everyone remembers the last words their child said before they went missing. What were the last words he originally said was, "Good night, mom, and good night, puppies," or whatever. That was what she said was his last words, but those weren't his last words. Now his last words were an hour later, after she asked if he was okay. "Yes, ma'am." That should have been in the first statement, not added in on the third round. So I find that concerning. All right, so that's one of the things that stood out to me. Next, she asked about the lights in the backyard, and Chris Proudfoot has basically said, "Yeah, that's all meaningless." But I do have a question about lights. If there was any light to be seen, why aren't they wondering why no light was seen from their son's flashlight, which they claim he took with him? If it's that dark outside and there's no lights in the front of his house and only a couple lights in the back on the garage, and the street is very dark, it's so dark on that street that no Ring cameras caught anything. Why is their son, if he's got his flashlight, not using his flashlight to see where the heck he's walking to? But they don't go into that. And that's a second concern of mine. All right. So that's the next one. Let me check here of other things. Oh, okay. Here's an interesting one. Nancy asked if they had both taken polygraphs. Now, it doesn't matter what your opinion on polygraphs are. The fact is, did you take one? And Katie said she took one and passed. Whether she did or not, I do not know, because that's always questionable what they're told by law enforcement. But she said she took one and passed. Chris said he didn't take one. And then the question is, why didn't you take one? And he said he offered over and over again, but law enforcement told him no, because they weren't worried about him because he was out of town. Wow. I can't buy that statement at all. Why? Because law enforcement if you offer to take a polygraph, they're going to jump on that. Why? Because it's an interrogation technique. And it doesn't matter if he was supposedly out of town. He could know something about what happened back at home with his wife and Sebastian. So that would be one of the questions you'd ask. You'd say, did your wife tell you anything had happened to Sebastian? That might be one of the questions. Do you know if Sebastian is alive? Might be another question. Did you help in any way with the hiding of Sebastian's body? Those kind of questions. Even if they absolutely knew he was out of town and there was all the proof was that he never snuck back and all that stuff. If it absolutely was out of town, it doesn't matter. They'd want to do the polygraph. So, yeah, I don't buy that statement. All right, then we have another very interesting statement. Nancy asked him about whether he ever hit Sebastian. And he said he just hit him one time. One time because Sebastian lied. And so he hit him with a belt. Because Sebastian lied. That's the story. And then he said basically that CPS was not involved. Okay, so over in the recent show that was done, here's a statement from him. This is on Smiley Stories World. I did my last video was on this. He said, CPS called on me in 2 states, New Mexico and Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And then he says, we were at the house and he got in trouble because he didn't have a belt on. And so I grabbed the belt and whacked him with it. And then he went to school and told somebody, and then CPS showed up at dinner time. So CPS did come to your house. They have checked, there have been complaints, which CPS had to follow up on twice at least. And the most important part here is he said he only ever hit Sebastian one time, and he did it because he lied. But yet we have proof in the last interview that he hit him at another time when he didn't have his belt on. So you hit him twice and you're lying. So I caught you on that one. All right. One thing he says a lot during the interview, which bothers me, he keeps calling Seth Rogers the father of Sebastian, the bio dad. I'm sorry, that's kind of disrespectful from the stepdad to call him just the bio dad and never use his name. Sorry, that just really bothered me. So I feel there is a great rift between the two of them. He keeps claiming they're like buddies, and I don't think I get that from Seth Rogers at all. So, yeah, just don't call him bio dad when he's the father of Sebastian. Now, two more things. He also says that Chris says law enforcement has told them there's no foul play and no nefarious issues, and we have been cleared. I don't buy that one either. They have the law enforcement at this point either has proof something happened to Sebastian that they're looking at that is foul play, or they just don't know. They have no way of knowing whether foul play is involved or not. Now, whether the foul play involves them is a different matter, but clearing them, mom was at home with Sebastian, last person to be with him. I don't know how you can clear her. Now you can think, okay, we've looked for all this proof that she left the house or she didn't return home with Sebastian, all this kind of things. You can look at that and say, we don't find any evidence that she did anything. But clearing a person is a whole different matter. So you just say, hey, we're vetting you, we're looking at everything, but clearing them, probably not. Now, if they said that, maybe they're just trying to see if they can, get them to let their guard down. That may be true. There's also a whole bunch of issues about the dogs. And so if you listen to different viewpoints on that, at some point she says the dogs, the dogs, not the cadaver dogs, but the scent dogs did hit on scent outside the house. And then other people say that's just not true. I don't have enough information to validate either one of those statements. Okay, but let's see the two last ones. Oh, yes. Okay. So Nancy asks him about being away. Were you not at the home? And he says, no, I was down in Memphis working, staying in an RV park. And then she says, when did you leave? And then he says that he had left the home in the early February, and he was down there till the day he was called back to the home when Sebastian went missing, when his wife called. And Nancy says, well, were you not at home any time during that whole month? Because I brought this up in my last video. This guy is supposedly a stepfather who supposedly spends time with his stepkid to be a father to him when the child is not with his natural father, Seth Rogers. So she's at home pretty much. He supposedly only comes home 2 weekends a month. So basically she sees him 4 days out of the month. And the rest of the time she and Sebastian are alone, and she's got to handle an autistic child on her own. He rolls in supposedly 2 weekends a month, but I'm not sure that's actually true. And in this month, it seemed like he never showed up at all. And he wouldn't have come home that weekend either if she hadn't called. So how much time does he spend away from home, and when does he actually return? And so he says, oh, well, I can't give you those dates because law enforcement told me not to give the dates. What? Why would law enforcement care if you gave the dates? I'm not, what? And then she says, so you weren't home the whole month. And then he goes, oh, well, I wasn't home that month, but I was home some of the month before that. So he tried to, kind of change that story. And he had to admit he wasn't home that month, which I thought was interesting. Why not? I'd love to know why he doesn't go home. Yes, it's a bit of a drive, but hey, that's your responsibility as a wife, and as a husband to your wife, and as a stepfather to Sebastian. And a lot of guys don't really think 3.5 hours is a lot of work. They just put on talk radio, music, and they roll home. And hey, I still don't understand what he's doing down in Memphis. He's a crane operator. Are there no jobs around the Nashville area so you can be home with your wife and stepchild? Or is that why you have so many wives in the past? Okay, that's just a personal comment. Now, the last thing I want to say is this. Apparently he went back down to Memphis, and she went with him. And when Nancy asked, well, why are you doing that when you should be up here, looking for your son and all that? And she goes, well, Sebastian could be any place. So we're looking here and there, I guess, on the way to Memphis. I'm like, what? I mean, really? I mean, it's a long trip down there. Do you know where he would be? I mean, that's just a stupid statement. And is it just you were caught off guard and didn't know how to explain that you went out of town for reasons that probably aren't necessary? But no, I don't think you had, let's stop here on the side of the highway and just check these trees during a 3.5-hour drive. A very strange statement. So that is what I got out of this. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else odd in here. I think those are the main things, but I thought their stories changed. They added stuff. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense. And he lied about hitting Sebastian. And that's a straight up proof of that. He lied. He did not only hit Sebastian once, he hit him at least twice. And I'm going to say it's kind of like when you say, Officer, sir, I only had 2 drinks. I think that person who does that twice probably did it more. But we don't have proof of that, but we do have proof that you did it twice, Chris. So why are you lying about that? Anyway, those are my thoughts on this. Again, if he really was out of town, he couldn't have done anything to Sebastian. She was in town. She could have. We just don't know. But their behavior has been odd since the beginning, which is why myself, Peter Hyatt, and Nancy keep looking at what they're saying. And there are other cases where you don't look at the parents at all. You're like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good with them. But these two, a lot of questions still. And I don't know what the police know. And then what their investigation is behind the scenes. Let me tell you, as a profiler, I know that what I know outside of a case, and when I go work with the police and I see all the files, I say, oh, now I know what really is going on. I know who you've interviewed. I know what you're looking at. There's a lot of things that I learn on the inside, but I'm not on the inside. And neither are most of you. Well, unless you're a detective on that case. And therefore, you really actually don't know either. We don't know what the police are doing. And so I say to all you people in the internet world who do want to run out into the real world and get involved in cases like this, stop doing that. This is a police case. You can have all the thoughts you want and listen to different opinions like myself, but please don't go out unless the police want you there. Okay? Don't go interfering, because I've seen a couple channels who are doing that, going out and driving around and doing their own investigation. And I think that's inappropriate and interfering with the investigation. Don't like it. But anyway, so that's it. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. I have a long playlist of many cases that I've analyzed. This is an educational channel. The intent is not to solve a case, but to help people understand how profilers and detectives think, how one looks at evidence. And I want to point out one last time, when you get red flags, any investigator profiler will have to, that sends them in a direction to look further. It is not proof of guilt. It sends you in a direction, and then you look for more evidence. And if you never find more evidence, well, then it turns out they're just weirdos. But if they find more evidence, then there's something, but you have to look at things that are the red flags in a case, because that is what sends you certain directions to look for certain information, because something's not quite right. So you want to find out whether it's some just weird thing, or whether the reason that something's not quite right is because you're looking in the right direction. So anyway, subscribe to the channel, check my playlists. Thank you for being here. And I say, I was not planning to be here tonight, but I had, after hearing Nancy do her grilling, I had to say something, because wow, very interesting. Good job, Nancy. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.